PEI Point of View, the place where future teachers of English talk about those things they would have wanted but didn't have the chance to learn in the English teaching program.
This is a great chance for you to have an amazing time learning new things related to stress management, mental health, language learning and teaching, among others.
We hope you enjoy the experience. Let's begin!
Hello everyone, welcome to Why Do We Forget Languages? I'm Tiare Carrasco. As you know, I have been working as an English teacher for the past 5 years. In my experience over the years, I've noticed some important aspects to talk about, such as foreign language attrition, which is the reason for the podcast of the day. What is it, and how we can avoid it? To answer these and more questions, I brought two guests from different fields to talk about their own experiences and conceptions about this topic. Welcome to Tamara and Fernanda. We are going to start with you, Tamara. She is a recognized manager who has been working in an important hotel group in different states of the United States. Please, Tamara, tell us more about yourself.
Hello everyone! As you mentioned before, I am the manager of an important hotel group called Sunny Waves, and I would like to introduce myself a little bit before getting to the main point. Well, many people who studied a foreign language in a school don't continue practicing it after they graduate. That situation happened to me as well, and it was a huge shock. I was born in this city, Los Angeles, Chile, and I learned English as a foreign language since my first language is Spanish.
Well, in that context, learning English is absolutely necessary nowadays, because we are living in a global society where you need to use the English language to communicate with people from other countries. And as you know, learning English as a foreign language is kind of difficult, because we don't have it as an official language. However, depending on students' motivation, they can have good grades and learn English. In your case, how were your grades in the English subject?
I was an outstanding student in the English subject during elementary and high school. My grades were always excellent, and of course, I was the best in my English class. But then, when I graduated, I didn't continue my studies, since I didn't have enough money to pay for my college tuition. However, I desperately wanted to study and achieve my dream of managing an important hotel in the United States. So I decided to start working in multiple jobs to earn the required amount of money. I worked for 5 years and a half, and when I finally had enough money, I decided that it was time to study a Bachelor of International Tourism and Hotel Management.
I'm very glad that you followed your dream. As you were studying a program related to international tourism, did you have to study English or some language?
Yes, of course. I had to study English, and when I started the program, I was so confident in my English skills, because that was the easiest subject for me at school. However, as soon as I had my first evaluation in the English subject and failed, I discovered that all my knowledge and skills had practically vanished.
Oh my god, you failed even though you had good grades at school. Did you actually lose all your English skills after working?
Well, I was still able to understand a little bit when I read or listened during class, but my pronunciation was awful and I misspelled a lot of words and had huge problems with grammar.
Wow, why do you think that happened to you?
Maybe that happened because I didn't practice during the years I was working, like the conventional wisdom that if you don't practice a language, you will forget it rather quickly. As my high school teacher used to say, use it or lose it. I failed the English subject, not just once, but twice. Can you believe that? There was some days in which I wanted to give up my dream.
You have experienced in first person the topic of today's episode. I mean, you were an excellent English student. Then you lost almost all the skills, and that was a huge problem, because in the bachelor that you were studying, you needed to pass the English subject to have the degree. That's really difficult to overcome. So, please, Tamara, tell us, how did you handle the situation?
Yes, it was a really problematic time, but then I noticed something. I worked so hard to get there, and the right decision was to continue with the program. I studied a lot. It was very stressful, but I did it. And by the end of the program, I finally became fluent in the language. So, as advice for all of you, try to always use the language. Use apps that can help you. Regular use is the key. Nowadays, because of my efforts, I am the manager of an important hotel and I can speak 4 languages. So if I did it, you can do it too.
I'm delighted about your decision to continue studying and overcoming those challenges. That shows a resilient personality. Congratulations on your amazing job, especially because you could learn 4 different languages. Now, let's welcome our second guests, who will provide a deeper understanding of the topic from an academic perspective. Her name is Fernanda. She is a recognized psychologist who has a PhD in educational psychology. Please, Fernanda, can you talk about yourself and your knowledge of the topic?
Greetings, darling. I am thrilled that you have invited me today since I find this topic fascinating. As you stated, I am a psychologist, and during my PhD, I actually scrutinized the attrition of knowledge in languages over time. This resulted in a long debate between the linguistic community and the psychological community, where there was a final consensus regarding the theories around language attrition.
Wow, that sounds like an extensive investigation on the topic, and very interesting. Actually, I didn't know that there was a debate between both communities. What do you think this debate started?
Well, the debate originated mainly because some linguists of the community did not conceive the idea of psychologists formulating theories that elucidated the attrition of language, since that was not their field of study in the first place, whereas some other argue that psychological insights about forgetting could be of value to the investigation and final results.
Could you enlighten us with those final results that the community agreed on?
Sure. Well, I will not deepen into every psycholinguistic theory that the community has agreed on due to the time limit, but I will talk about 2 of the most important theories.
Yes, please. We really want to know both theories. Can you explain them in detail?
Of course. The first one is language retrieval, slowdown, and failure. Here, it is argued that loss of information is impossible after information has been transferred to and stored in permanent or long-term memory. It is assumed that forgotten information is not erased from memory, but that the access routes have deteriorated, in particular in recall and production tasks. The simple fact that productive skills are more affected by failure than receptive skills illustrates the principle of that concept. It is possible that a person recognizes the meaning of a word in a text or phrase, however, they may not be able to retrieve the word when it is needed for production. This is called the tip of the tongue phenomenon. The fact that most speakers recover the word on the tip of their tongues shows that these memory failures are not cases of information loss, merely failures of access.
Personally, I noticed that in my high school students, because after summer holidays, they used to easily forget words when they have to speak or write. I mean, the productive skills. On the other hand, in the same scenario, they usually can listen and read properly. They can remember the words when they just receive the information. So my students experience the tip of the tongue phenomenon that you were talking about. I think knowing this theory is really useful for teachers as well. Fernanda, you mentioned 2 theories. Can you talk about the second one?
I would be pleased to talk about it. The other theory is called language decay. So, in here, studies of L2 attrition also appear, at least in part, consistent with the concept of decay. Studies showed that students who spent a longer period of time without L2 input lost more language structures than students who spent a shorter time period without exposure to the L2. The finding is consistent with what was named the forgetting curve by psychologist Ebbinghaus more than a century ago.
That's also very interesting. I read about the forgetting curve in an article, but I didn't remember a lot about it. So it's great to refresh the information. Regarding both theories, do you think that any of those could explain what Tamara experienced?
Of course. As I was saying before, what happened to the other guest can be explained by the language decay theory with the phenomenon of the forgetting curve. The lack of exposure, input, and practice over time increases the possibility of attriting the language acquired. Since Tamara spent almost 6 years neglecting her English skills, they became deficient with time. And also we can perceive some of the language retrieval theory since she spoke about how she still had part of her receptive skills but was lacking in the development of her productive skills.
So, as you mentioned before, it's important to be exposed to the language and practice it a lot to not forget it. And personally, I agree with that, since as a teacher, I always promote the regular use of the language inside and outside the classroom, trying to provide my students with a lot of input so they can practice as much as possible to develop their productive and receptive skills. It's also important to consider creating an environment in which the students feel motivated enough to learn the language. This is to help them to reach a satisfactory level of the target language. Now, let me give you some advice to overcome those situations and to not forget the language that you learned in high school. First, try to look up for new words. Second, practice your pronunciation. And finally, speak with your friends or with native speakers. In other words, make the English language part of your life. Tamara and Fernanda, do you want to add something before saying goodbye to our dear audience?
Well, you already know my experience regarding attrition, so remember that keeping a language active is a lot easier than reactivating it. So don't get rusty, practice as much as you can, keep up your speaking skills active, do regular conversations, etc. If you're still learning a foreign language, try to always practice it. And if you're like I was, try to develop a passion for learning that will allow you to fulfill your dreams, just like I did. I wish luck to all of the people that are listening to this podcast, and remember, don't give up.
Well, a theory of language says that we can't forget something that we haven't learned in the first place. So the fact that some aspects of the language slipped your mind means that you actually learned them sometime in the past and that they might still be there, stored somewhere inside your brain. Therefore, do not feel defeated if you can't remember something, since forgetting aspects that we don't regularly use is part of the human nature.
Wow, brilliant answers. I just want to say thank you to both of you. I had a pleasant time and enjoyed our conversation a lot. So thank you again for accepting my invitation today, and I hope you succeed in any future projects that you may have.